Hey everybody, welcome to the morning market briefing. It's Tuesday, April 21st, 2026. Hope you are doing well out there. Ben, Tom, how we feeling?
It's a big day. It's a huge day.
Huge day.
We got Warsh Barsh 2026 kicking off this morning.
The Warsh Barsh.
You know, we're about to see where the chips will lie. It's gonna be good.
What are you watching for?
Just, I mean, there's going to be some unbelievable grandstanding, I'm sure.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of 2-minute clips cut for X.
A lot of rich guy, white guy talk, I'm sure, because
he is one.
Because he is one, for sure. So I'm certain that there's going to be some, you have SpaceX Holdings, you must be buddy-buddy with Elon Musk, known white supremacist and Nazi leader. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I think Warsh is a very intelligent guy. I think he's going to be able to navigate that pretty effectively. I mean, it's going to be good. It's going to be fun.
I think it's, potentially going to be. I think there are going to be very, very robust attempts at incendiary back and forths, and I don't know him real well. I don't feel like we've had tons of exposure to how he handles those situations. But my anticipation is that it's going to be, if you're looking for fireworks, it's going to be more of a methodical schooling.
Yeah. I mean, the tough part is these people know nothing.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things. The biggest takeaway is if you ever watch these testimonies, that most of the people who are in charge of this country in Congress and in the Senate are exceptionally dumb and have very little financial acumen.
Very little.
And so they will ask.
Here they are giving oversight.
They may ask questions that are unanswerable because the line of questioning is either wrong or just so far off that it doesn't even make sense. So there's gonna be a lot of that.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of. Can you tell me about ABC inappropriately phrased thing that's not real? And he's gonna say, "I'm not sure what you mean by that." And they're gonna say, "You're telling me you don't understand what A, B, and C mean?"
Yes, a lot of that's a lot of that. So
Ben, what's you got any particular angles as you're watching?
I have a lot of angles on this actually. So first of all,
let's go.
Ben's been waiting his turn very patiently.
Yeah.
So first of all, I think that I've seen Walsh speak. I've seen him answer questions in person. I've seen him be off the record and on the record, also on TV. And I think that he is very well-spoken and, to your point, methodical in how he talks. He also has the classic politician. People are going to ask me a question, and then I'm going to respond the way I want to respond. And you already saw that he released his prepared remarks yesterday that he's going to say, and he goes right after the independents. I mean, that's probably about 20%. Another 20% is just on his high school. So I mean, this was a big chunk of what he talked about, and he said, look, at the end of the day, the Fed is an independent body. The only thing that keeps the Fed from being independent is the Fed. If the Fed chooses to respond to what politicians ask them to do, that's on the Fed. It's not on the politician. The politicians can ask whatever they want. At the end of the day, it's up to the Fed. And so he says, simply stated, Fed independence is largely up to the Fed. And he says there are 3 important implications worth highlighting. And this is he also hits Jay Powell, I think, on this one. He says, point number 1 is price stability. And he says, quote, inflation is a choice, and the Fed must take responsibility for it.
I wouldn't say I think he's taking a shot at Powell. I know he is.
The second is that they should be focused on the operational conduct of monetary policy, not trying to, lose $100 billion a year like the current Fed is, which is just a wild number every time I hear it. $100 billion a year. And he also says, quote, the Fed must stay in its lane. And then he goes on to say, don't go into fiscal and social policy. So I think he's going to end up dealing with a lot of questions on the independence. And I think he's going to deal with a lot of questions on his net worth. And I think that he's going to do just fine in both of them, specifically with respect to the independence and related to Trump. I think that he's going to, if you look at what Besant said the other day, everyone's saying how Besant disagreed with Trump and then Trump overruled Besant. I disagree with that characterization. I think Besant said, because of the war right now, we don't need to do anything on interest rates, so let's stand pat for now. And then Trump the next day separately said we should lower interest rates. I don't think they were going back and forth. I think that Trump has enough respect for Bessent, as crazy as that sounds, that he'll let Bessent do what his thing. But he also will say that, I at least want people to listen to me and take into consideration what I'm thinking. I also think that, finally, I think that Walsh is going to get pressed on, well, what if Trump goes after you the same way he's going after Jay Powell and basically trying to coerce an interest rate cut by bringing this lawsuit? And I think that Walsh is going to separate the two, and I think he's going to do very adeptly. And he's going to say Powell has one responsibility with the Fed building, and he has another responsibility in the interest rates. They're not linked, and I think that he's going to. I'm sure the Democrat senators are not going to buy that, but I think that he'll be able to say it and with some authority.
What time's this broadcast?
It's at 10,
I
right?
think it's
10:30.
10,
Yeah. The independence thing I think is a really good point, because hypothetically, if Elizabeth Warren got up there and said Mike Bobo is a dangerous man, he needs to stop relying on the bubble screen and have Gunnar Stockton push the ball downfield, it's up to Mike Bobo whether or not he wants to change how he calls the offensive schemes.
And as it turns out,
he's very independent.
Yeah, Mike Bobo is certainly not under the duress of the Georgia fan base. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is, like, if that person can't do anything, can't fire you, you don't have to listen to anybody. Yep. It's Jay Powell's choice whether or not to be like, man, we're just absolutely under siege here, and we're just
I think,
fighting the ability for them to make decisions for us.
And perhaps this has been implied on the commentary we've offered on this call before, but I think that's, in a nutshell, my frustration with Powell over the last, since Trump's gotten back in office. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot both say that Fed independence is under attack and also say I'm a real hero, or accept the accolades that come with being a hero, because either it's under attack and there's nothing you can do about it, or it's not, and you can choose to be independent. And if those two things are misaligned in terms of the circumstance tied there too, I'm not a hero if I am independent because I choose to be. And I think that's the framing. I don't know how much of it's Powell, how much of it is Nick Timmerhouse and others just painting this picture of, this brave hero standing up to oppression, when in reality it's like, no, you can be independent or not.
I mean, it's a little bit of a forced metaphor here, but it's relevant. So my wife Julia was sharing this with me yesterday. Kevin Durant's mom was interviewed and said to Kevin Durant,
the real MVP,
you can cry, but do not whine. And I feel like we're seeing a lot of whining going on.
Yeah. Big time whiner.
Big whining.
Put it on the record. Ben Nye, Jay Powell is a whiner.
Yep. That's the headline of this. You won't believe who's whining next. Trump is on Squawk Box, I guess, right now, presumably talking about Warsh, also about the Iran deal. A long love letter to Tim Apple on Truth hit. Just
only one misspelling.
Trump likes those who like him, and I think this was a long post just to make sure everybody knew that Tim Cook liked him.
We had a long discussion yesterday afternoon. Is Tim Apple the most famous Auburn graduate? A lot of Auburn.
The super users who are listening, ears are perking up right now, but would love to hear from them on the most famous Auburn person.
I will say that I brought up a number of options, and Klecker, bless his heart, he's a young boy. When I brought up Bo Jackson, he said that no one thinks about Bo Jackson as someone who went to Auburn.
Which is that's like, tell me you don't know Bo without saying I don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty. And then I brought up Cam Newton, and he was like, oh, Cam Newton's definitely more famous than Bo Jackson. And certainly if you're under the age of 40.
Yeah.
I
went Charles Barkley as my number one.
Yeah, Barkley's a good answer.
Bo Jackson's a good answer. I don't know that the general I don't know what percentage of the population even Charles Barkley presumably is more known than Tim Cook, I would argue.
Yeah, but is he
Like, we live in a weird bubble in which we are keenly aware of the CEOs of major companies. I don't know that, like, the average person on the street would be like, oh, yeah, Tim Cook, CEO of Apple.
Well, we started going through a number of schools, and the number one for Mississippi State is the CEO of Freeport-McMoRan, which is a mining company that always looks cheap. You buy it, and then you lose money, and then you sell it, and then you think 5 years later, oh, I'm going to buy that, and then you lose money again. So that's
they
a
do the
tough
same
one.
thing, by the way. They have a copper business, and then they decide to get in energy, and they're like, no, this was a bad idea. And they sell it, and then they buy it back again.
You know who's not in the copper business? Mamdani.
Not a fan. It does seem like we're inching towards an Iran deal, Ben.
Yeah, so Mark Halperin, who's actually been pretty bearish on the prospect of a deal over the last couple of weeks, said, look, guys, we're heading toward a deal. It would include a 15-year ban on enrichment. And nuclear material would stay in Iran, but be diluted down so it can't be used to make a nuclear weapon. So that's what Iran would give up, and the U.S. would give up. They would be sequenced removal of sanctions and sequenced unfreezing of assets. So removal of sanctions, unfreezing of assets. It does not include dismantling of the terror networks, dismantling of the ballistic missiles, although Halperin did note that one could argue those have largely been degraded already, not to the extent of what the U.S. would claim, but certainly from what they were 6 weeks ago. So that's what the deal would be, and then obviously full and free access through the Strait of Hormuz during the 2 to 3 week time frame where they iron out the technical details. So, but it would be presumed that would continue beyond that. So that's the deal that's on the docket, and I think that I doubt Trump will say that at 8:30, but I think that we'll get some more color as the days progress. And there's been a lot of talk that Iran is not going to meet, or maybe they're going to meet, or they're trying to play hard to get, but they're going to meet. And I feel like a deal's going to get done.
Apple making a switch on the CEO position. We alluded to Tim Cook earlier. Much beloved by President Trump, and taking over will be John Ternus. Strong engineering background, seems to be pretty well liked within the company. Has certainly played the game well. 51 years young, pretty young guy.
I feel like Trump's going to like him too.
Yeah,
like he's an engineer. He's central casting.
A UPenn guy.
Yep. And he's been very good at politicking in his 25 years at Apple, which the Wall Street Journal characterized as a good thing. So like building and currying favor throughout the organization, hardware. Interestingly, he's big on the hardware side, especially with the Apple Silicon, but he did not really have a big hand in the Vision Pro, which has largely been a dud. I do think that he's leading the charge on these new Apple glasses, which should launch later this year. And I think that Tim Cook is trying to set him up for success. I think they've got a buyback planned. I think they have these Apple glasses planned. I think they have the new foldable iPhone planned that's going to be launched in September, and they have the new series. So I think Apple's probably Tim Cook saying, you know what, I was set up for success when Steve Jobs gave me the reins in 2011, and I'm going to set up John Ternus for success as well.
Amazing that Cook's been there for 15 years.
It's crazy. Almost my entire career.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Revenue over that time is compounded at 10%. Earnings per share is compounded at 15%. Total return 24% per year.
Not bad.
Pretty good.
Not bad, especially when you think back where Apple was at that point in time, and people thinking, no, they'll never replace Steve Jobs.
And it's really incredible. I mean, Apple's a great case of study of seeing how you can compound earnings growth over time. Earnings per share growth of 15.9% per year sounds good, but it doesn't sound like crazy. But they've basically taken
it every 5 years.
They've taken it from $1 a share to $7.92. That's what compounding does.
So, I mean, famously, a short-lived young analyst of this firm, Apple, it's a $100 stock. It's $273 at the moment.
And that was after the split.
That was after, yeah. So that's tough.
Tough times. Amazon up 3%. They're doing a new deal with Anthropic, throwing $5 billion at it, may inject as much as $20 billion. The big thing here, I guess, potentially is that they're coming in at a pretty reasonable or lower valuation of $350 billion compared to some of these other deals that have come in at $800 billion. Amazon's going to provide Anthropic with chips, basically continuing to see. Would you lump this in with the other circular financing that we've seen, Ben?
I think a little bit, although the amount that Amazon's putting up is pretty low. I think this is a huge endorsement of Amazon's chip technologies. I think that they clearly are one of the leaders here, and I think that you're starting to see the market appreciate that, and I think that this is going to be a massive 5 gigawatts is a massive buy. It's going to add up to well over $100 billion. And so this is a big deal for Amazon. Yes, they're paying some up front, but they're going to get a lot on the back end.
Excuse me, Ben. Lots of earnings. Take us on a quick tour here, and specifically kind of on read-throughs on the economy from some of these folks.
Yeah, overall it's pretty good. I think some of the defense space is a little bit noisy. Northrop's down, Raytheon's up. But I think if you have commercial aerospace, there's a huge bottleneck right now in getting jets and getting engines, and so Raytheon has the Pratt & Whitney business, which accelerated and had and there's so much operating leverage in that business. You see some growth there. GE orders were up 87%, which is just remarkable. In manufacturing, we are seeing Steel Dynamics perform exceptionally well. They say that we remain constructive. They talk about consumer optimism, order entry activity, pricing that's been improving across the business. They say that they're really benefiting from the crackdown on unfair trade practices, and they think that a favorable market environment will continue. Meanwhile, 3M, also in the industrial space, a little bit more leverage to the consumer, not doing as well. D.R. Horton didn't see much of an improvement, although they did see some resilient home buying demand. So I think that things weren't as bad as people feared on the home buying front, but 3M wasn't really able to capitalize on that. And then in the energy space, Halliburton performed exceptionally well in Latin America, driven by Mexico and Argentina. I do think that Venezuela will be a topic on the conference call. And then in healthcare, I think taking the foot a little bit off the neck of healthcare by the administration is helping some of these guys. United Health up at 6% pre-market on better than expected margins. So overall, a good morning for earnings as the economy just chugs along. I mean, this is taking a step back. It is impressive that these companies are putting up these type of results, raising guidance in many cases, in light of massive disruption that we had in March due to the Iran war, due to record changes in oil prices, record changes in gasoline prices. Oh, and by the way, the IEEPA tariffs that were struck down, causing a lot of chaos in that market. And yet, these companies are raising guidance for the year. So all good news on that front.
Good. I mean, to your point, retail sales came out just a few minutes ago, and it is red hot. To the tune of, we saw basically a big chunk of the potential rate cuts get wiped off the board. We came into the day at more than 50% chance of getting a rate cut, and it dropped to 40 pretty much instantly.
Well, let me ask you,
39 just updated again.
Let me ask you this, Tom, because I'm curious, and I think it's a very philosophical difference. Over the last 15 to 20, anyone who's come into the industry for 15 to 20 years, if you just kind of like reading the textbooks, what the textbooks will tell you is they'll tell you a very Keynesian view of the world, which is demand drives the economy, demand drives inflation, and oil prices drive inflation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that is one lens that totally misses another side of the coin, and that would be what we saw in the 80s. So in the late 70s, early 80s, people blamed oil prices, but really you saw big jumps in M2 money supply. And we got M2 money supply under control. But what also happened under the Reagan and Clinton administrations is that we came through with massive supply side economics and productivity. This is the whole George Gilder philosophy of increased production and lower prices. And I think Kevin Warsh is going to talk about this. Apple's a perfect case study. How much have iPhone prices risen over the last 15 years? And then compare that to how much productivity or how much better iPhone is as a product over the 15 years. The iPhone becoming a better product is GDP growth. That's how it's measured. And it hasn't changed in price. In fact, it may have even gone down, especially on the memory chips. Yeah. Memory chips have gone down in price. Computer chips. That's supply side economics. And I do wonder if AI is going to usher in another productivity boom that brings in the supply side benefits such that we saw in the 80s and 90s, when the focus is always on the Fed and what oil prices are doing. But really, what about the economy? What about
where are we innovating?
Yeah, and if we're innovating, we are going to increase production and lower prices over time, which help to offset any of those other inflationary consequences. And I'm curious to see if Warsh talks about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many factors at play that I think are net positive for the economy. And we've talked about a million of them. The productivity is one. I mean, I think there's no small effect to the fact that people got big tax refunds. And why do they get big tax refunds? Because we usher through tax cuts, but also the fact that we spent a lot less money. The deficit went down. There's only so many goods and services, and the government is buying less of them. So what does that do? That drops demand massively, and now people are buying more of those things. You know, why is Pepsi cutting prices? It's because SNAP benefits aren't buying automatic $10 billion of Doritos every year. So what's going to happen? They're going to have to cut prices. And guess what? People will probably buy more of them. Yeah. And it's a total reconfiguration of who's buying what. You know, you start deporting people who are here illegally, suddenly there's less demand for things like Modelo. There's less demand for things like housing. You know, you start to see all these things start to fall off, and it's like the government has been spending all this money. It's not like these people.
I mean, the grocery store example that we talked about yesterday is an unbelievable example, the Mamdani Mart. I mean, you look at the lack of efficiency of that spend, and you think, well, who's paying for it? Yeah, guess what? It's not Kroger shareholders.
If I print money and give it to someone who came over the border who then rents an apartment, what's the value add there? There isn't one. And what it is, what the value add is inflation. But if you do that, plus you start cutting taxes, plus you start saying, hey, Apple, you've got to manufacture that iPhone in these United States. But guess what? The price didn't go up on that either. They actually cut the price because they weren't seeing enough demand.
People were talking about a $21,000 iPhone 18 months ago.
But guess what? There are now people who live here who are being paid to do that, who are taking that money that's earned by creating an iPhone, and they're going and renting an apartment, and they're filling it with furniture and children and food, and all of those things create value where we were doing so many things that did not create value.
And I think that's the point. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're coming at higher, they're filling that with higher priced furniture. And I think that's the key element. I mean, you just said retail sales came in hot. The cost, I'm looking at the government CPI numbers for the last 4 months for goods, excluding food and energy commodities. And we are at 0.0, 0.0, 0.1, 0.1. And we're putting up retail sales numbers like what we're seeing today. And I think that there's a danger, the way the Fed is currently constructed, that they look at retail sales and say, well, there's no way we can cut interest rates. And I'm saying you don't have to look at the economic growth and inflation as one and the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, particularly when it's government driven. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that people don't understand is inflation is driven by the government.
It's a choice.
Every time they spend $1,
it's a choice.
Every time they spend $1 they don't have, that's $1 that destroys value instead of creates value. Because you print $1, you give it to somebody, they spend it, and that doesn't create anything. It doesn't do anything except for make the available goods more expensive. And that's just, until people wrap their mind around that, then no one will understand how this economy works or why these things that are considered draconian or why would we rile up the super productive Europeans by slapping tariffs on them? It's because we want to make money and we want to be prosperous and we want to continue to kick ass and take names and be world number one, and they don't have any interest in that. because they're lazy and they complain a lot and they just want to.
A lot of whining.
They
You
want
can
to
cry. You
they
can't
want to
whine.
file lawsuits against Google and take $10 billion
For
a
nothing.
year off of us every single year. So I guess that's a good probably
No more-
stopping point.
No more Mr. Nice Guy.
Hey, let's go and take on the day. You know,
Let's go. Let's rock.
Carpe diem.
It's already been seized, I would say.
Yeah.
All right. Y'all have a great day. We'll wrap it up there. Talk to you guys tomorrow.